want the very long version, I think we went about an hour and a half in August. They videotaped the entire thing, and it's available on y'all's HOA website. So I'm not going to go into quite that much depth tonight. I thought I was on an agenda of many things, and then Mike snuck out of town. They told me I'm the headliner. So I'm going to go ahead and give you some background. I recognize some of y'all for being here at the last meeting. I realize that some of you may not have been. So we'll kind of update you on the whole process, and then give you an idea of the progress we've made since August, which was just 4 months ago, but we've actually made a little bit of progress. If I look a little dirty, I apologize. I've been walking around Austin White Line all day today, which actually has to do with making progress on your project. So you're not going to be able to see this from back there, but it'll give you a general idea, and then I'll put it down, and you're welcome to come look at it afterwards. It'll be demo here. That's fine.
Lisa, would you mind going over just the background? What is the project?
Sure, that's what we're going to do. Okay. So, as most of you know, if anybody's lived here for any amount of time, the Round Rock West area in particular is very prone to flooding. And it doesn't have to be like the, oh my gosh, Hermine storm. It floods here. This has gone on historically since, the early 80s, pretty much since this neighborhood was built. Pretty much right after it opened, there were 3 big floods, boom, boom, boom. A lot of that had to do that this neighborhood was built before we had floodplain maps in this area from FEMA. When those initial floods happened, we asked for emergency permission to get the FEMA program and started the progress. So that's like the early 80s. Anybody who's been here long enough to get close to paying off your mortgage knows there hasn't been a whole lot of change since then. When Hermine happened, unfortunately, even though the rain was primarily upstream of Round Rock West, Round Rock West got flooded again. One of the partners in this whole process, the Upper Brushy Creek WCID, and actually this is Larry Quick, he's the president with the Upper Brushy Creek WCID. They decided that, they have all these amazing dams that you guys have probably seen around town. Matter of fact, if you go out to Old Settlers Park and there's this nice swimming hole, fishing place, those are usually flood protection dams. Those were all built in the 50s and 60s, owned and maintained by the district. Do a great job. One of the challenges is the upstream around Rock West, there's a void, right? After Hermine happened, the district realizes, wow, there's still a great opportunity for some flood improvements here, and they commissioned a study with a grant from the Texas Water Development Board to go, where are our worst areas in our entire district? And their district is the whole Upper Brushy Creek. Okay, so think from Hutto all the way back to the headwaters of Cedar Park and Leander and kind of uppers of Austin that drains all this way. So Lake Creek eventually goes into Brush Creek. It's a very big area. Not surprisingly to most of us, they did that whole study and said, where's the worst density of what they call damage centers you guys are living in? A damage center, which is roughly represented by these red dots, does not mean you were flooded or you have not been flooded, or and if you're not red, that you're not. It's a theoretical model exercise based on what they were required to do as their grant. And what it does is it puts a typical storm, and it takes all different types of storms, the 10-year storms, the 10%, the 2%, all the way up to the terms you're used to, the 100-year and the 500-year. It said if these storms came through, would these homes be inundated? And then it helps calculate a score. And the purpose of that is to help people prioritize their money, right? Whether it's FEMA prioritizing their money, or cities, or counties, or a district. Like I said, no big surprise, giant damage center around Rock West. This other one off the map is actually Chisholm Valley. 2 of our oldest areas in Round Rock, before we had mapping, before we really had a good handle on what's going on. Since that time, again, no big surprise, wow, here's the big area, what can we do about it? As part of that study, they did a very, very high level of what could we do to help fix some of these areas? And not necessarily we, but what could be done? Could anything be done to fix these areas? And no, just removing a bunch of shrubs in the channel behind y'all's house isn't going to do it. This is a very, very large project. And what they figured out is in order to do anything substantial to make the big difference, we're talking the scale of we need to add 2 more dams, what are now being called Dam 101 and Dam 102. So to get you oriented on this map, this is McNeil, 35. This is primarily the Round Rock West area through here, Cimarron. This is roughly the middle school. I can talk a little bit on that Oak Ridge thing too. I understand some folks want to hear about that. This is the existing Dam 9 that you can see if you're ever on SH45. This is the existing Dam 8. There's some money capacity in that bond rate that we can also use to fund maybe even up to half of 101. So I like to think in my somewhat optimistic mind that we're about 75% there. We have some other partners that we're going to talk to. Even just getting partners of cooperation and support. We've got tremendous already expressed support from the county. We've talked to some of them. We will be doing federal permitting with FEMA, flood insurance, with the Corps engineers. The environmental permitting, though, is the big one. We have endangered species, all back in the Austin wetland that we'll have to address. And one of the fun kickers is both of these projects are actually in the city of Austin jurisdiction when we're building these things. So kind of what next steps? We spent the last 2 days out there with, we have structural geologists who will help us figure out. The land behind you guys is all over the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. It's very environmentally sensitive, and part of the reason it's environmentally sensitive is it's what they call karstic limestone. Kind of think of Rice Krispie treats, right? A lot of water seeps through it. Which is awesome for letting water seep in, not so awesome for building dams on top of. So we're still early. Like I said, it's only been 4 months, but we're pretty pleased with the progress we've made this far.
Are these dams, are these going to be constructed where there's going to be gates to release water, or are they going to be overflow
No,
dams?
these are going to be dams just like the other district dams. These dams are basically big earthen embankments with little holes that just slow the water down. These are not gate controlled. There's no mechanisms involved. There's nobody making a decision. Oh my gosh, we're worried about this. Let's flood the people downstream. None of that happens. It's just, it fills up and slowly lets the water out. And it's basically a natural process. There's nobody to control anything, which is really, in the long-term sustainable, the best way to handle it. So they'll look pretty similar to a lot of the other ones you've seen. Those generally the most cost-effective way to build them too. Luckily, we have a lot of rock source where we are, so we might have some opportunities. Maps is, yeah, they're not real good. They're not bad, but they're not real good in areas. And so one of the things that they don't take into account of, and one of the big challenges with FEMA is, they were done in the 80s. Drive upstream, folks. There's been a whole lot of things paved since then. There's been a lot of things that have changed. As I was talking about, there's actually some things on there that they show people in floodplain that aren't, because there's been some stuff about it. So we're in the process of taking what was designed originally to be just a planning model. The district committed and put more funds in it and got more grants, and actually talked to FEMA. They were going to do little updates in this area and convince them, instead of doing your little spot disconnected work, can we just substitute a whole new set of maps? And so we're almost to the point where those are ready to start that process with FEMA. And again, that's a public process that everybody would be involved in. There's some notice requirements so that everybody can see the up changes. And this is important because if you are playing flood insurance, the one doggone thing you don't want to do it on is inaccurate maps. Because with the new flood insurance standards, it's not just anymore, are you out, are you in? It's also, are you in this deep, or this deep, right? Because it's moving towards actuarial rates. So it matters. So if you're one of these fellows over here that's shown 3 feet underwater, and there's really no floodplain over there, it's really hard to explain. Yes, sir?
I'm a neighbor, I live on the floodplain, and I'm also an insurance agent, so I do my own flood insurance.
What?
So, well, I don't know about that. But what FEMA is proposing, and this stuff all gets locked up in Congress, is that they're proposing to cap our rates at 1% of our dwelling cost, okay, which would be fair, okay, as opposed to letting them go to actual actuarial rates. Now that's a proposal it hasn't done, because a couple years ago they said, okay, we're going to let them go to actuarial rates, and then all of us like, whoa, that's 10–20% a year, until they hit actuarial rates, and then they backed off on that. And so I got a little bit of a rebate from what I pay. So they are working with it, and so the best thing to do from my standpoint is to raise your deductibles to the highest you can, which is $5,000 right now. And they're talking about allowing us to have $10,000 deductibles. They're not available yet. So just so you know, flood insurance has, you have dwelling coverage and you have content coverage. They're separate on flood. Whereas homeowners, when you buy a homeowner's policy, they're all the same. They all just pivot from the dwelling cost. Whereas flood, it's all you can have dwelling only, and you can add contents if you want to. And each of those are separate deductibles. And so what I did, I literally 4 months before Hermine had just increased my coverages, and increase my deductibles. And so that was, I mean, it was a huge game changer for me because I had a lot more content coverage. I mean, literally like Providential, I did it 4 months before the flood, okay? But the best thing to do to keep your rates down is to have some content coverage and to jack your deductible up to $5,000. That way you keep your premiums at a decently reasonable amount.
Sir?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Gunter, Philip Gunter.
I did your OASIS certificate. Well,
Okay, yeah, well, okay, yeah.
The reparative loss thing is a big kicker. You know, the 3 drought rule.
Right.
Have they addressed that at all? Because we got popped twice in the late 80s, early 80s, and this made the third.
That's within 10 years is what it is. And so,
We're doing the 10 years now?
yeah, yeah. So I don't think anybody is in that danger zone yet. Okay, but it, you know, part of the deal is they removed the permeable ground cover, and so as you talk about the growth is part of what's exacerbating this deal.
Bigot Waters is dead now, right? Or Waters Bigot, whatever it was. They killed that.
It got modified.
Right, modified.
And that's the one they
Exactly.
changed, but so now they like, what, it's like a 50% a year cap or something?
Well, they've taken that off of it for those of us who are in high-risk areas.
Yeah.
They're kind of letting, I think mine went up 18% this year.
Right.
Or they were talking about like 25.
But they haven't really said anything.
No, they haven't capped them yet, but they're trying to cap them at like 1% of dwelling costs.
Okay, that's in the Congress again.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's
So
just,
we're in limbo land.
absolutely, absolutely. So this is, you know, certainly something that's very attractive to us is to, you know, take care of it once and for all.
Sorry.
That's all right. Like he's describing, that they've changed. They thought they had a good plan. With BW12, it changed in 14. There's more proposals forward. It's really important whether you have this contact or your insurance agent or somebody to stay up to date because it's kind of constantly in limbo.
And what Weldon did for me is whenever you sell now, when you're in a high-risk area, you have to have an elevation certificate. So I went ahead and paid him just to have it, you know, because the elevation certificate will go up eventually. So I just went and paid him just to have it done.
Were you above or under? I forget.
Above or under what? I don't remember.
Under your point.
Oh, no, man, I'm right in the middle of it. Oh, shoot, I live on the creek. I mean, I took 13 inches 4 years ago.
I'm 4.2 feet. So.
So, you know, and that does bring up an interesting point in case any of y'all were in the areas that you saw surveyors around. One of the things that we had asked was we wanted to make sure, you know, our goal right now, till we get real poor numbers, is to get everybody out of that 1%, right? That's going to be our goal. Now, if something starts spiraling out of control, I'm not going to let the whole project leave. If we can't get everybody out of 1%, we're not going to give up. If we have to downscale, we'll do that, and we'll come talk to everybody. But anyways, with the goal being the 1%, one of the things was important for us to find the lowest homes. So we actually came in, and a lot of it we did laser survey and then figured out who truly was the lowest and then went and shot some back entries. Is went in and surveyed along kind of each of these waterways of what would control in the model to figure out what were the lowest homes. So we went and found you guys that were the biggest winners and are tying you down because we want to make sure, again, if somebody has to make a conscious decision that we can't get everybody, then we want it to be a conscious decision. We don't want it to be because somebody didn't realize that they were using outdated survey or were using, you know, real common practices to use LiDAR, which is, you know, an aerial thing. Well, that's tough in your area because of the tree cover and so forth. So if you saw surveyors around lately, that's what they were doing. They were doing some ground truthing and verifying who are the biggest challenges, and let's work to get them out, and if we get them out, we get everybody else out. So as I said, we're working on some environmental and geology stuff now to help tie down the exact location. That's probably a May-ish timeline that we would get that information. Right now, those projects are linked together. Then what we'll probably see is the projects are going to split. 102 will break off on its own, and it's probably going to go a lot faster than 101 for lots of reasons. And so the district will start moving forward with that, and we'll continue to move forward with 101, pursuing other funding options and starting some preliminary engineering. We do have the money squared away to do
So now 102 is more feasible to build and it's far more expensive, right?
No, 102 is the less expensive one.
Okay, oh, that's the 6 to 8 million one.
Yeah,
Okay,
102 is a smaller project, less money, and even it's evolved. It was like part of a dam and some channels, and it keeps morphing on us. That's why we're doing the work we're doing now to figure out what it is that we really need to build. But it is the less expensive one, and because of where it is geologically, it should be a little bit easier for us to permit. It actually
Is
doesn't.
that over Tan Creek, or what tributary is that one on?
This is one of the Tan trips here, yeah. You know, that area over there is primarily clay, which means it doesn't have a lot of karst, it means it doesn't have a lot of karst bugs. It also means it's already got some good material for us to start with to line the dam, so that's a good start. And then the price tag makes it really nice. And one of the things we want to do is we just feel like once we get some momentum on some of these, we can really start getting maybe some of the other people to believe it's possible. If any of y'all have been around here since the 80s, you know, this was tried in the late 80s. There was discussion of building dams. You know, the early version of the district was involved, but even FEMA, and there's a lot of people, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control because it's so complex. And you know, ultimately, it's really, really, really expensive. And so everywhere that we can find ways to have cooperative partners so they don't make things more expensive on us, they don't make it more difficult environmentally, if we can be creative how we do these, we're going to do that. Because if we can keep it in that limits, you know, right now, like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that, you know, it's still a thing. You know, and I believe in it. I think it can happen, and if it happens, it's going to make the impact that everyone here needs. So, as I said, it would take a real long time to get to the point of permitting. If we ever get to break ground, it's going to take less time to build it than it is to permit it. So, what I committed to Mike was, as we started hitting some of these major milestones, we'll be coming in and updating you guys on where we are and how things are progressing. Other stuff, just real quick, for any of the folks that have seen the work that's been going on in Oak Ridge and Creekview, most of you have probably driven through what is kind of like an overgrown puddle that shows up way too regular in front of that middle school. The work that's been going on is basically to add some additional inlets to push that water off of the street. So we think we've dealt with that. Yes, we apologize for doing it over the holidays. The reason we work through the holidays, which we don't normally do, is so that we can do it with the kids who are out of school. Because as you saw, we had to rip out the school driveway, we had to do some other work.
Where does that water go?
The water goes in this. It goes in that same creek that it's always gone. It's just, instead of it filling up all over the road to get there, it drops in a pipe and goes now.
Why do they have to tear the driveway out after they pour the concrete?
Because why we redid their driveway, they had tried to do the driveway. They were really eager to stay on their aggressive schedule.
Right.
And they tried to do the driveway. I think this was right around Christmas when they poured it. It was too cold. And so it was too cold to really put down concrete. They thought they would get a better scenario. They didn't cancel the trucks. The truck showed. They went ahead and tried it. It wasn't, to spec, it wasn't going to hold up. So we went ahead and had to pull it out.
I was just surprised when I drove by and went,
Wait, yeah. We don't like to reverse. We don't like to reverse work, you know. And for any of the poor folks that live over there, one of the big challenges to doing stormwater work is we never just get to do stormwater work. There's always something else in the way, generally other utilities. One of the things we had to do over there was relocate a water line that turned out to be a lot crankier of a process than anybody estimated. And those guys were out there until 11. Making all kinds of racket for folks over there that one night, so that's what happened there. There's also over at Creekview, if any of y'all know by the jogging trail over there, there was two kind of little bitty pipes, and really we just got all of our capacity. It was kind of like an overgrown low water crossing. You know, a little bit of water would go underneath, and then everything else would just flow over, and then it'd jump back in the channel and go. Those poor folks that live right by there also got water pretty regularly in the house. They don't need things like hermine, they just get water in the house every time it goes over. So that was something else we recently did. We adjusted some water lines and replaced the two or three little rod pipes that were down there with very large box culverts. And so now the water should go under the road instead of over and back in the channel. Again, not really rerouting water, not anything big like these guys are doing, just trying to get the water to go under the roadway. So those are things that we call kind of quick hit that we're trying to do. Still surprisingly more money than you'd think they would be. But our priority for when we're trying to do some of these things is always going to be, if there's water that's getting in a home, that's going to be more priority over nuisance. And then if there's nuisance that's truly blocking, you know, in the situation where the school, there's not really another road over there, there's not another option. And in that case, we're actually able to dial that one in relatively inexpensive. And the school was just ecstatic, so they worked with us to allow us to rip out the driveway and put an inlet on their property and do some other things. So that worked out pretty well, and it's my understanding they will be out of there, should be out by the end of the week, both jobs. So the only thing left will be to get some grass growing, so they might be back to do some watering.
It'll be surface Creekview, looks great.
Does it good? I haven't been over there yet, but that's good to hear. Yeah, we were worried because it'd been so cold, we didn't think we were going to be able to, and then we got this beautiful weather, so we were able to get some asphalt down. But It's kind of always a thing, if you want it to rain, dig a hole. And if you want it to get cold, try to go lay asphalt or concrete and like that. So, any big overarching questions on the big projects?
Does the 102 provide any relief in if it does get built sooner? Does it provide some relief in there, or is that it's not without the combination that you're not going to really get the?
It's really not without the combination. There'll probably be some minimal. We haven't quite figured out, and that's part of this process to figure out how 102 will fit in. Because originally it was 102 and put some channels in behind Dam 9, and we're still trying to figure out what that is. And we never, to be honest with you, it wasn't significant enough to go, oh, we can just do 102 and wait a while and do 101. But once we finally figure out what it's going to be, one of the things we will do is go ahead and determine, well, we just know as a fact it will be done first. So it'll be great to be able to kind of explain, you know, well, what is the interim benefit of, we already have this one done, what does that do? Because it is going to provide some positive benefit, just not to the scale that I think, you know, most people would want to see. Yes, sir.
Last time I inquired about flood insurance, they said it wasn't available until they did their magic incantations. Well, you know, when will we be able to get flood insurance? I live on Lake Creek.
You should be able to get flood. I'm looking at the fellow behind you.
I can do it anytime. And just FYI, I mean, I can be somebody's flood agent without being their home and auto agent. Because, I mean, I tell people, I mean, if you go to the FEMA, I'm a registered FEMA agent. I mean, I'm a farmer's agent, but so I go to their classes and I get on their webinars and whatever. And so anytime I run a flood quote, I do it all. I do the preliminary stuff, and I call them and I say, okay, tell me where's the trap doors here. I want to make sure that I'm understanding what I'm looking at. Is there, you know, are there any tricks in this one, or is it pretty straightforward, or whatever? And they'll tell me, but I'm not had anybody where I can't do it. I mean, because I mean I've been here over 18 years.
Yeah, I think the only way you would run into a problem is, can you get them to issue an insurance based on what we believe the situation to be versus what the mapped situation is. So for these folks over here right now, for example, they're mapped in the floodplain. So they're going to be told they need flood insurance, and they're going to have to go through that process.
And you may need an elevation certificate.
You can get an elevation certificate to show more detail to help show where that house is.
They're
You should still be able to get
they're not declining anybody.
I think the biggest problem now is once Congress threw out
Right, bigger water.
bigger waters, FEMA didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
They had no mandate. I think the problem is you can tell them rates for this year.
Right, that's
But
true.
we don't have a clue in hell what next year or the year after.
And that's why I always just call them and check. Okay, what's the latest status on things? And so I just tell people, if you're in the high risk, you know, if you want a lot of coverage, then have both deductibles at $5,000. That way you get a lot of, because that $10,000 is not going to be what's going to kill you. It's going to be the other part. You know, my claim was well over $100,000. You know, 4 years ago.
What's it now, about $2,500 for $250,000, something like that?
Mine is just around $2,000. But again, I have $10,000 deduct, you know, two $5,000 deductibles.
But it is available. It's just
It is available,
We don't know
yeah.
what it's going to do in the
And
future.
know that
According to the government's internet site, it wasn't.
Well, it's been that way since they threw out big waters.
Good luck with that government internet site.
What's the difference between an elevation certificate and a survey?
One's horizontal control, one's vertical control.
Well, yeah, but the one that, your survey will show your elevations.
And there's some additional information that the surveyor has to attest to, or an engineer related to elevation. When he went out and did it, he actually had to get some specific elevations. They sometimes give you your slab elevation on your survey, but it's usually not enough information of what's required for the
It has to
FEMA
fit on,
document.
it has to fit on a FEMA form, because
Yeah,
you have
there's
to know
some
what the
specific-
upstream elevation is, because that's where your water table is, if you will. So that's what the, you know, the surveyor's doing, or, you know, the engineer, that's what they're doing. They're not only figuring out your elevations, but they're also figuring out where the water is around you.
And also, we had a whole bunch of different NAV 29, NAV 82, different formats for figuring elevation of sea level. And they finally threw it with their hands. And of course, now Round Rock has that new HARM system in. So we
You have
do
different things to
have
figure out your
one.
elevation. You're on solid ground, for Christ's sake.
I just wait till a flood and went out and measure how deep it is in my house.
Well, and know that even if we build this, even if we get everybody's house out of the 1%, that doesn't mean you won't have to have flood insurance, right? Your mortgage provider could always require you to have insurance. However, what it will do is it will reduce your risk of flooding, therefore it should reduce your premiums.
But that'll be up to FEMA. They'll have to recognize what you've done.
Right, and this process will end with, I mean, the only way to do it, we'll have to go for FEMA.
Sure.
So you'll see some new models that'll come in the next, and maps, say in the next year and a half, 2 years. And I'd love to be right after those maps, building a new dam and go, we need to redo them again. And take the floodplain and go like that. So, but know that the insurance, and because it's the federal, it's totally different, we don't have any control over that. I'll let that very intelligent gentleman back there fight that battle. I'm just going to try to see what we can do to fight Mother Nature. So.
What do you expect to, do you expect all those homes to be out of the floodplain? Is that the
Yeah, so
goal?
the goal is to look at everybody upstream. There's some folks further down Lake Creek, south of 35, and they're even lower. There's just kind of no way.
There's a total of 80 structures that are at risk.
There's 84 that are shown in the deal, and there's plus or minus depending which mapping. But the goal is to get all of those structures so that the structure is at 1%. Again, they'll be
Just
flooded
the
all the way
structure,
around their house, possibly.
Well, the yard's not covered under flood insurance anyways.
Right, but when you get into the mapping, when you actually go and map a blob in 2D, it's
Yeah,
never
that
that
matters.
precise, right? So it may show the house in, and you'll get an elevation certificate, and they'll have to go, okay, where's your finished floor compared? So we'll get into the complexity. The main overall goal, though, is can we make it flood a heck of a lot less often here? And when it does, can it be a lot lower, right? So can we not flood the roads? Can we keep the amount of water that's in fewer houses, less frequently, and at lower depth? Yes, sir.
Well, I did notice in the last couple of years when we have had some heavy rains that the city was out in the middle of the night cleaning the debris out of the bridges. You know, which
We are having a little bit more issue.
Don't do it otherwise.
This year, in the last, well, what, we've been in the drought 4 years now. We're having a lot more deadfall because of the drought.
Every 2 years. So anybody's interested, you know, we are elected public officials. We don't get paid very much, $150 a month. But, you know, you feel like you're doing your civic duty, and you don't have to be an engineer to do this. You know, if you're interested and motivated, and you're going to dedicate yourself to a 4-year term, then I would encourage you to think about running for the election.
Thank you for your time.
Yes.
And, you know, he mentioned the multi-generational. Yeah, these are 1,500-year, you know, besides paying for all the 102 and a big portion of 101, the district's going to own and operate these things after they're done. So again, there's not gates, but there is regular maintenance costs that you have to do. If you don't take care of a dam, it becomes a greater liability than it is a help, right? The only thing scarier than not having a dam is to have a dam upstream that breaches on you when it wasn't planned. So they'll have continual perpetual costs that'll be out of the district. Yes, sir?
When were the existing dams built? How old are they now?
1950s to the early 1960s.
So
Basically,
before-
after the floods,
before all
we said
this
there
was
was a
built.
drought in the 50s, and then at the end of that, there was an enormous flood.
Yeah.
And so that really motivated the U.S. government, the Department of Agriculture, this is what they call the Soil Conservation Service. And so they were trying to accomplish two things. One, control the floods. The other thing that happened is because of the drought for 7 years, a lot of the plants that died, the topsoil washed away. These dams are designed so they capture that topsoil, so it doesn't just go down in the Gulf of Mexico. So if you actually look on, like the USGS
If you look on the top
website,
lines, they show a soil conservation.
it'll say it as Soil Conservation Service, but that's us. And they're basically designed for, quote, a 50-year life expectancy or lifetime. But that just means that at that point, the federal government stops paying for them. But obviously, they're still here. And that's why the district was created by the state of Texas in the 1950s to maintain these dams and take ownership.
Yes, sir.
You said there's 84 houses, properties in the floodplain?
No, I did not say that. Larry mentioned that there's about 84 that we think that will get out.
Or it won't get out?
That we will get out. There's a big controversy as to how many in the floodplain. You have to tell me which
Let me
floodplain.
say what I meant to say.
Yeah, please.
There were 84 potential damage sites. So that's the term. And again, this is a computer model. Doesn't mean that, you know, any kind of map that was generated by the computer, which, you know, we're trying to calibrate, doesn't mean that that map is official yet. So
So for example, FEMA shows a lot more houses than that in the floodplain, because some of the houses in here in the floodplain that in the new models they won't show.
So I was gonna say, if there was 84 figuring $300,000 apiece, which is generous, that's 25 million. You could buy the houses and tear them down.
There's a reason to, well, okay, well, you look at that, but that doesn't fix the north-south roads, right? So then we have no north-south access, we have to go fix all those roadways. It doesn't address, even if they're 300,000, because it's like, what does it cost for the home? Then you have appraisal, then you've got to remove, and then, oh, by the way, you just gutted one of the most significant neighborhoods in Round Rock. And so, as we were having these early conversations, policymakers did ask. So we know, because I can assure you, if it was a $50 million dam, yeah, I wouldn't be standing here. It would be a different scenario. The numbers are close enough, and some of those numbers, like I quoted you, includes the cost of land acquisition, which we're hoping to delay and string out like a payment plan. You know, there's some other options. So we're hoping to get creative. To be honest with you, the numbers are roughly break even at this point. Buy houses, build a dam.
Because you have parks.
You'd have parks, you have to maintain.
But they lose tax revenue.
But we lose tax revenue, we lose the core of the neighborhood, and we don't fix the roads. The road, and unfortunately, if we don't put these upstream, I can't really fix the road. I mean, if you guys have been out there, which I hope you're really not out there when it's raining like heck, but it's not like raise the road this much. It would be get a running start 3 blocks back to get the road over. So the best thing that can be done, it's either this or like a tunnel, like they're doing in Waller Creek. And I penciled that out because I thought that would be neat. Yeah, that's not even close. So this is it. This is our shot to make the biggest difference. And we think if we're smart in how we do it, we can get it there. But that's the key of this preliminary effort, is to see that we can get it there. And then because it's one of the most significant areas here in the Upper Brushy Creek in the county, it sets up very well for the opportunity for grant money. A lot of times, to be honest with you, federal grant money is very scary because it comes with a whole lot of strings and a lot of complexities, and generally introduces very many, it introduces all of those environmental concerns that make things cost more money and more difficult and take more time. Because of the type of project we're doing, we have to kind of do all that anyways, which kind of opens up the door to go, well, then we might as well ask for the money. So we're hoping that we will get some opportunities there, and just the success the district's had so far, just getting money to do studies, we're hopeful. You know, and the fact that we're going to go there, we don't need somebody to come do it all for us. We think we can get partway there. The ideal goal for the city is for the city to pay a quarter, the district pay a quarter, and somebody else pay the other half, right?
I think that's the key right there, is doing the cost share.
Yeah.
That's
Well, does
incentive to close it
FEMA give out grants for flood?
They do, and this has actually been in our hazard, even though it's just technically become a project. I've been calling it Dam Zero for a couple of years, and we put it in our hazard mitigation action plan several years ago, which is a document you have to have, and when they declare a hazard in your state for any reason, we can apply for money. So it's in there so that we can go there. There's a couple different options. In order to get to that grant step, we need to have it a little bit more defined, and that's about where we're going to go.
Do the river authorities get involved in any of this? The surface water?
Generally, no. The only, to be honest with you, they probably only get involved as we start holding some water that's theirs.
Yeah.
So all of these are designed to pass through water. Okay, so they're not, if water's flowing in that tributary today, water's going to go through. All we're going to do is slow down the big storms. We're not going to hold water. We're not going to make a lake. That's not what these are about. That's a lot more complex thing environmentally, and we want to keep the continuous flow that makes things kind of.
I was just thinking if there's a program with them that they could fund part of that too.
We've got a couple of people that we're looking at, and a couple of kind of oddball things that I might find creative ways to get some participants. You know, the key is to get past this schematic. You know, this is, I mean, I kept that one, and I'll let y'all see, but this is just the updated one. Kind of took off the old, you know, the magic marker version there. But as soon as we can get to something a little bit more concrete, it'll be easier to find some partners.
Didn't Round Rock have quite a price tag of cleanup from Hermine? Because they did a great job of bringing in dumpsters and front-end loaders. I mean, it looked like a war zone for a long time because, you know, you just take your piano out, get to the edge of your driveway, and they just pick it up with a front-end loader. And so we just had dumpsters and front-end loaders just all over the place. Didn't they have quite a price tag?
We do, and anytime there's an event here, not only the cleanup, but the emergency services that are in place. And it's not that, you know, people don't want to go help, but the demand is so significant here because we have to kind of deal with it from each side of the creek, right? So if there's an issue, we've got to send a different unit. It creates, if something ever happened anywhere else, you know, it starts making, it really stresses the resources. So this is the sustainable solution, we believe. This is, go cobble up all your pennies and everything you've had squirreled away in the jars, put it out there, and let's fix it the right way. And even if we have to make payments to do that, then we're done. And then, you know, have a solution that will stay in place and keep working. So, yes, sir.
I assume John Carter's supporting this?
We talked to his office. When we first really were even willing to talk about this project out loud was March of last year, and we had a representative from his office. Obviously, anybody who's around here, and we'll be following up with Judge Carter's office, and his is well, maybe as much influence with some of these federal agencies as other support. We've met with Lisa Bergman with the county, Judge Gaddis, to get them in the loop so they know what's going on, and kind of, you know, hey, if there's some opportunity later in the capital plan, be looking for us. That's the one nice thing about taking so long to permit is we don't really need any money for a while. So I can really, you know, gives me plenty of time to ask people to kind of, you know, dig deep and look in their shoebox, and if you save money over here, can you think of us, kind of thing. We're also going to start talking to some of our state partners, see what our options there, and then we'll probably ask, but we don't expect any help from Austin because the reality is a lot of this water is coming from them. But what we're hoping is to get some cooperation, and because they're going through, that's the other prime time, because they're going through a similar thing down in Onion Creek. How unfortunately here people had 3 feet of water, down there they had 30 feet of water. They kind of get that. And mixed emotions about the changeover in Council 10-1, but that also means there's also the items of the service. So he'll be familiar with that, and we're hoping that when we go forward and we have to start permitting with them, you know, they show a little leniency. So, yes, sir.
This may be a rather simple question, but
we just take a
what exactly is going to, how will these dams prevent flooding in those 80-something homes?
So what happens is we basically build large earthen embankments across the drainage ways now. And in those earthen embankments, they have relatively small drain holes. Okay. So the water just piles up behind it. Like we create a traffic jam in the creek is basically what we do. And so all the water piles up, and so behind this dam, as you can see sort of, here's a good one, here's damming this existing dam. And you can see, look at the water downstream, look at the water behind the dam, right? And so we're going to flood, instead of flooding you guys, we're going to flood the Austin White Line property and hold the water back. And so it'll hold that water and it'll come out slowly. And so what'll happen is it'll build up this big flood pool behind it, and then it'll come out at the rate that the size of your creeks can actually tolerate. So it'll end up with big flood pools, and that's why they're such an important partner. We have to do something with that water. And so that volume of flood water that's always coming through, we're going to create basically temporary lakes, and they'll fill up, and they'll probably take about a week or so to drain down, maybe a little bit faster. Does that kind of answer it?
Yes, I'm good.
One other question. I'm surprised with all the talk about water shortages and, you know, only sprinkle and the moon is blue and stuff like that. I would think they'd want permanent lakes.
There's a couple things that come with that. In most cases, none of us own the water rights because we're talking about water that's even coming off the Robinson, the Austin White Line property, right? So there's basically, can't have permanent lakes unless you own the water. 2, because this part of their property is over the aquifer, somebody have to pay the money to line that with clay. Because as what we have with some of the other structures that they have over there, where the water comes into the dam, and yeah, some of it slowly goes through the pipe, a lot of it just sucks right into the aquifer.
I would think they'd want that.
And if they want to spend that money to do that, they'll have that option, but they haven't expressed any interest to do that just now. And again, we would have to clear the water rights issue. If they don't, there's probably a certain amount, because their land is so large, that they may own a certain amount of water rights. But in most cases, to your point of the river authority, most of this water and the water rights are the river authority. There's a little bitty dam about as big as y'all's table over off of Sam Bass, and that fellow over there got a cease and desist letter from the state for superior water rights downstream, and that little thing's been there from the people.
Now, once the water's in the aquifer, then it's rule of capture applies, so that the owner can get that water. But once, as long as it's above ground, it's river authorities that control the surface water.
So it gets a lot more complex. And
I don't care, the water would stay here instead of going downstream. That seems to be a good idea.
It could be, and if they want to buy in, if somebody wants me to hold their water for them, you know, the thing for us though, if you have a permanent pool, that doesn't provide any flood protection, right? Because it's like the lake's already full. So then I got to build an even bigger one. So we don't want to have to build it any bigger than we can unless somebody wants to write a ticket.
How do we as homeowners help you?
Good question. First and foremost, kind of know where you are floodplain. Talk to this man or other people about flood insurance because it's going to be a couple of years. It's important that you guys get flood insurance, even if you're not near the blue. Really, really, really think about flood insurance because as he'll tell you, if you get flooded, we have two kinds of flooding in Round Rock, kind of everywhere, but this is how we break it down. Do you get flooded by the back door or do you get flooded by the front door, right? There's a lot of people in Round Rock West unfortunately get it both sides. They get it from the back door from the creek and the front door from the streets. In general, our streets are designed to carry the water. We designed them, that's what they're there for. And the bigger storms, they're designed to carry the water, and then it's designed to go in the right of way. Not so much stuff was done in this area back then, older standards, right? So if you got flooded from the front door and that creek's dry, it doesn't matter where the flood water comes from. You're still not going to have your contents covered, so please consider that. The farther you're away from the floodplain, it just means your risk will be lower, and ideally you can get you better rates. The next thing will be to figure out what our next assembly block is. So right now, you guys are all in a holding pattern. I've committed to kind of touch base with Mike Freeman. But if we get a partner to the tipping point and they need a nudge, we may ask you guys to get involved. But right now, everything surprisingly looks scary good. So be incredibly patient. If you hear weird rumors, call me, reach out, either through Mike or me. Let's get accurate information. Remember, it's not going to happen tomorrow, no matter how fast we go. It's going to take us a couple years. So keep up to date with that. I've had several people call me since the August meeting, which if you have the patience or can't sleep, feel free to watch the video. There's a lot of information in it, but they've called me to ask because they're selling their house and they're trying to understand how that fits in. Know that the new maps are coming. When you see that, if you see public meetings, especially if they're not our public meetings, make sure you come out. And if it's not you, if your neighbor's going or somebody on your block, try to get some representatives. Because the other thing is, if we don't know, if we're not hearing from y'all, there's nothing we can do. I mean, when it rains like heck over here, there's kind of problems everywhere. And we've got a pretty good handle in the neighborhood stuff. We're starting to. But it never hurts. Hey, has somebody ever told you about the problem at the block of 1700? Or if it changes, that's a big one. You've been here a while, it's always done this, then we probably know. If it just started a new thing, let us know ASAP because there's a blockage, there's another problem, somebody did something they weren't supposed to, and we want to get out and resolve that. And so hang with me, I appreciate you asking. Yes, sir?
October a year ago, we had some minor flooding around here, and I have a client that lives over in Old Round Rock by the library in that area, and they live downhill of their back fence neighbor is above them, and comes from the street into your house. That's specifically excluded in your homeowner's policy. That's a flood. Okay, it's just outside groundwater, and it only has to involve two properties. One property is the street, the other one's your house. If it comes in, that's a flood, and so it can happen, in some pretty weird. Or if you have a back fence neighbor and they're uphill and their pool overflows in your backyard, and you can try to go after and sue them, but good luck with that deal. So, and flood insurance for non-floodplain people is $300 or $400 a year, and right now, don't hold me to this, but right now, if you buy flood insurance and you're not on floodplain, and say you get remapped, which is what happened to some of these homes over in Pflugerville the last couple of years, they tend to grandfather you at where you were before they mapped you in the flood zone. So it's financially advantageous that way. But it's musical chairs. There's a lot of moving parts to it.
As we get some momentum, the other thing we'll try to do is we're toying with some version of a website so that we can kind of just post updates so that you guys don't want to have to come spend your quality time with me. You can just kind of go on the website at your leisure and see where we're at. So.
Need one more? Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say something 3 times. Turn around, don't drown. Turn around, don't drown. Memorize it. Turn around, don't drown. When your car is in 6 inches of water, it can float off the bridge into the creek. So you can see, you know, there's, my wheels are splashing, so I'm not too deep in water. The two things, the bridge may have already been washed out, and what you're looking at is just muddy water with a huge hole you're gonna fall into. Or you can float off the creek, I mean off the bridge into the creek, and all of a sudden you're in 10 feet of water. The situation is such that for natural disasters, natural hazards, flooding is the largest source of fatalities in the United States. It's greater than hurricanes or tornadoes.
It's the only one that's
Flooding.
wrong, too.
Yeah.
We keep getting worse at it, folks. So as you get new neighbors, honestly, especially people out of state, they don't grasp flash flooding. That's not where they came from. They come from back east or up north, and it's, you know, the flood fight because it's snow melt and you've got days to react, or California, whatever. I mean, if you've been around here, you know it'll rain like heck, it'll flood, and it'll all be gone in 45 minutes. Just sit still. So as you get new people to the area, please share that turnaround about drown. A lot of times they don't get it because they think, oh, it's this thing, and it happens here in an instant. So.
And these are the low water crossings in Round Rock West. So they're a hazard in our neighborhood.
Any other questions?
It's not exactly the flood thing, but it's about the Robinson Ranch. Our dishes haven't rattled the last week or so. They stopped blasting them.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
December was the last, I think.
They out of block, is that what it is?
Yeah, they ran out of rock.
I'll put the dishes back up.
Yeah. No, we haven't got any new announcements on it. The last announcement went out in December.
Yeah, I heard they were about finished with it.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, appreciate it.